After discovering that trillions of illegal funds were about to be smuggled abroad, two corrupt police officers from a local precinct refused to miss the opportunity for corruption. Both of them had long been drowning in massive debt due to gambling. However, it turned out they weren't the only ones determined to steal the money from the mafia. The trillions in illicit funds were also being targeted by another group of police officers from the regional headquarters. Thus, a corruption competition erupted between the precinct and the headquarters, each vying to plunder the nation's wealth. But how did it all begin? This is the story. The film opens with a police car heading to a crime scene, where a man was found dead after falling from his fifth-floor apartment. A wound mark on the victim's arm then aroused suspicion in the two investigators from the local precinct. Their names were Kim and Lee, longtime partners. They immediately went upstairs to search for more clues. Inside the victim's room, bloodstains were scattered everywhere. Kim speculated that the perpetrator had been looking for something. However, before the investigation could continue, an officer from the Central Criminal Investigation Unit arrived. His name was Kong, and he rudely dismissed them. Kong stated that he would handle the case alone. Lee, feeling offended, attempted to challenge him. Fortunately, Kim quickly intervened, as he and Kong apparently knew each other. Back downstairs, Kim returned to the victim's body to confirm his suspicions. He then discovered a memory card hidden within the wound's bandage. Kim instructed Lee to keep it as payback for Kang's arrogance. After leaving the crime scene, Kim and Lee went to a massage parlor or spa. As usual, they handed over a bag full of gold watches. They had been running an illegal business for a long time to make extra money. However, this time, Shin, the spa owner, requested a discount. This insulted Kim, causing him to lose his temper and lash out. Panicked, Shin quickly apologized and handed over their share. Before they left, Shin mocked them for only extorting fellow Koreans. He pointed out that trillions of funds from corruption and illegal businesses were constantly being sent abroad by Chinese gangs. Hearing this, Kim and Lee became intrigued. Unfortunately, Shin refused to reveal further details about the exact time and location of the shipment. Later, Lee drove Kim to the hospital where his daughter was being treated. This was the reason Kim needed so much money, to cover his daughter's medical bills. Meanwhile, Lee had no family and lived only with his girlfriend. Because of this, the two of them were like brothers, both alone in the world. Thanks to his efforts, Kim was finally able to pay off the hospital bill in full, which amounted to 80 million won per month. Upon entering the room, his daughter, Jimin, woke up. She looked delighted to see her father after an entire day apart. Jimin then said that she wanted to go home quickly once her surgery was done. Understanding this, Kim could only lower his head, knowing he still didn't have the money needed for the next stage of treatment. Meanwhile, Lee was already at the casino with his girlfriend. They both loved gambling, hoping to get rich fast. The next day, Kim met a man at a restaurant. His name was Jukiriang, a Chinese mafia boss whose illegal businesses dominated South Korea, including the casino Lee often visited for gambling. There, Kim learned that his partner's debt had already reached 650 million won, or about $40,000. After finishing his meal, Kim asked Jukiriang about the man who had been thrown from the apartment to his death. However, Jukiriang claimed that it was a suicide, not a murder. Without wasting any more time, Kim also asked about the trillions in funds that were about to be transferred to China. But Jukiriang simply laughed and dismissed it as a mere rumor. Kim responded with a sly smile as if he had just uncovered a hidden truth. After Kim left, Jukiriang could only curse under his breath, realizing that the situation had now become dangerous. At his office, Lee was summoned by the precinct chief to meet Kong, who had just arrived. After apologizing, Kong then explained the victim's identity. The man was a spy assigned to investigate the Chinese gang. Unfortunately, the information Kong was supposed to receive had gone missing. Hearing this, Lee immediately recalled the memory card he had hidden. Without hesitation, he contacted Kim to check the stored information. At a nearby internet cafe, Kim and Lee were shocked by the amount of money the Chinese gang planned to smuggle. They discovered that the funds would be transported via ship. Moreover, they realized that stealing evidence was a criminal act, making it impossible to hand over the memory card to Kong. Amidst their confusion, Kim and Lee retreated to a hidden location. Both desperately needed money, Kim for his daughter's medical bills and Lee to pay off his gambling debts. However, Lee was reluctant to take extreme risks due to the danger involved. Understanding his hesitation, Kim made a single request, he wanted Lee to investigate something for him. That night, as per Kim's request, Lee returned to the casino with his girlfriend. He arranged a private conversation with the manager, Kwang-suk, who had just arrived. Without wasting words, Lee directly revealed that the Central Crime Unit was investigating his dealings with the Chinese gang. Therefore, for the sake of mutual security, Kwang-suk needed to disclose when the trillions would be transferred. Taken aback and left with no choice, Kwang-suk was forced to spill the secret. After obtaining the necessary information, Lee went to the hospital, bringing a gift for his niece. He and Kim then moved outside and reached an agreement to steal the trillions from the criminals. However, to carry out their plan, they needed weapons and equipment. This made Lee think of a junior officer who worked in the police armory. At a nightclub, a young officer named Jung-hun arrived after being invited by the two. He seemed eager to get involved for mutual profit. Kim explained that they needed weapons only to intimidate their opponents since the sabotage operation had to be swift, with no casualties. Without hesitation, all three quickly reached an agreement. To erase their tracks, they had to switch vehicles after escaping with the money. Then, they would hide it in an abandoned warehouse belonging to Jung-hun's late father in a rural area. That night, after finalizing their plan, the three relaxed in the warehouse, sharing their dreams. Lee looked forward to paying off all his gambling debts once he got his share. Jung-hun planned to buy the sports car he had wanted since childhood. Meanwhile, as the mastermind, Kim simply wished to start a new life abroad once his daughter had fully recovered. Their dreams felt closer than ever, almost within reach. A few days later, on the exact date of the shipment, everyone who had prepared themselves departed for the port. From a distance, 4 people could be seen carrying boxes of money. They quickly put on masks and entered the criminals' hideout. As soon as the lights were turned on, 3 of them immediately aimed their weapons and ordered everyone to get under the tables. Jung-hun swiftly grabbed a few bags to take with him. After loading them into the trunk, he got into the car to pick up the remaining ones. However, a sudden gunshot from the window struck his thigh. In the midst of the chaos, the 4 criminals took advantage of the situation. They secretly prepared to attack, forcing Kim and Lee to open fire. One criminal who attempted to escape was also taken down by an unknown individual. Despite the pain, the panicked Jung-hun tried to run outside. Unfortunately, another shot from the figure at the window sent him collapsing to the ground. Filled with rage, Kim and Lee retaliated blindly, firing without restraint. In the end, the unknown shooter fell lifeless. Seeing Jung-hun on the brink of death, the two quickly carried him away. Lee could not hold back tears, blaming himself for causing his junior's death. Kim, too, had to stop by the roadside just to regain his composure. However, they had no choice but to stick to their plan. Eventually, they sank Jung-hun's body along with the car into the pitch-black lake. After switching vehicles, they arrived at the warehouse. The money they had stolen turned out to be more than they had ever imagined. Yet, Jung-hun's death had turned their success into deep regret. Kim suggested they keep the trillions of cash hidden until things settled down. Not long after, their phones rang simultaneously. It was the police chief, unaware of what had happened, summoning them to the crime scene at the port. That meant Kim and Lee now had to investigate their own case as if they were uninvolved. At the crime scene, reporters crowded the entrance. The high number of casualties had caught the public's attention, making it headline news. Kim calmly walked toward the police chief, who was waiting for him. His superior stated that the victims appeared to be henchmen of a Chinese mafia. But the real shock was the discovery of a dead police officer at the scene. It was none other than Kong from the Central Investigative Bureau, with a gunshot wound to the chest. At that moment, Kim realized that it was Kong who had shot Jung-hun to death. The police chief then revealed that Kang's death had prompted his superior from the Central Bureau to come. His name was Oh-sunken, a man with a serious demeanor, determined to uncover the truth. Due to the complexity of the case, a joint task force was formed. The police chief explained that the mastermind was Ju Kiri-yong, an international mafia figure. His criminal network operated not only in South Korea but also in Japan. He funneled all his illegal business profits to China, where the true boss resided. Oh-sunken declared that Kang's death would not be in vain. At the airport, without anyone realizing, the big boss had secretly arrived. In public view, he immediately slapped Jukiriang for his failure. After the meeting ended, Lee received a call from Kwang-suk requesting an urgent meeting. Kim reminded him to be cautious and not reveal anything. Meanwhile, Oh-sunken also invited Kim for a conversation. It turned out that the two had known each other for a long time since working in the same division. Fortunately, Oh-sunken did not seem suspicious of Kim, despite his increasingly dangerous situation. Under the overpass, a panicked Kwang-suk questioned Lee about who had informed him. Lee truthfully stated that it was Shin, the spa owner. After Kwang-suk left, Kim reassured Lee, explaining that Shin had likely leaked the information to several people. As a result, the Chinese mafia would not suspect them, as they appeared to be securing the situation. Meanwhile, at his office, Oh-sunken received a report from a local police officer. Several weapons had gone missing from the station on the day of the incident. At the same time, an officer named Jung-hun had also disappeared without a trace. With this, Oh-sunken had his first clue toward uncovering the truth. After being tortured, Shin, the spa owner, was interrogated by the Chinese gang. Jukiriang accused him of being too talkative and leaking secrets. Terrified, Shin desperately begged for mercy. However, the big boss arrived and gave a signal. A butcher then stepped forward and slashed his throat. Inside the car afterward, Jukiriang, splattered with blood, changed into fresh clothes. His driver revealed that Kwang-suk had been seen secretly conversing with Lee. This revelation made Jukiriang rethink his trust in Kwang-suk, whom he had always considered his right-hand man. The next day, Oh-sunken suddenly invited Lee to accompany him. Without Kim's knowledge, they arrived at his daughter's hospital. Oh-sunken, as an old friend, knew a lot about Kim's family situation. He then asked Jimin whether her father had been at the hospital on the night of the incident. Trying to remain composed, Jimin answered without hesitation. On the way back, Lee asked Oh-sunken why he was suspicious. Oh-sunken then revealed that Kim had once accepted a bribe to pay for his wife's treatment. He had deliberately burned crucial evidence to cover it up. Now, with Jimin needing surgery, Oh-sunken had every reason to suspect Kim. After all, once a cop turns corrupt, it becomes a habit. While they were talking, Lee's phone suddenly rang. It was Kwang-suk, pleading for Lee to come to the port immediately. His voice trembled with fear. Lee kept his response calm to prevent Oh-sunken from growing more suspicious. Meanwhile, at Jung-hun's apartment, Kim and another officer searched his room. Fortunately, there were no clues indicating his whereabouts. As Kim returned to his car, Lee's girlfriend suddenly approached him in tears. Her name was Sojin, and she was crying because she had been unable to contact Lee for 2 days. Kim asked his colleague to leave while he calmed Sojin down to avoid attracting suspicion. On his way to the port, Lee called Kim about Oh-sunken's investigation. Kim immediately rushed to the hospital to check on Jimin. However, she had vanished from her room. Panic set in as Kim and the nurses searched the area. Fortunately, not long after, Jimin was found unconscious inside a restroom. On the other side, Lee, who had just arrived at the dock, was immediately greeted by Jukiriang and his gang. He was then dragged to the place where the big boss was venting his fury. His target was none other than the helpless Kwang-suk. With a menacing glare, the boss demanded to know where the trillions in cash had been hidden. However, Kwang-suk could only weakly confess that Lee had forced him to leak the shipment date. Lee quickly explained that he was merely trying to offer protection. He claimed that the Central Investigation Bureau had known about their plan from the beginning. Their heated argument left the big boss confused. To test his truthfulness, Lee's hand was forcibly tied to the table. The big boss gave a signal, and the executioner swung his blade. Fortunately, Lee remained silent, convincing the Chinese mafia of his loyalty. Afterward, Lee was forced to face Kwang-suk, who was about to receive his punishment. The executioner mercilessly beheaded him multiple times until he was dead. At the hospital, Kim was informed that his daughter was under severe stress due to the delayed surgery. This made him think about the trillions of cash hidden in the warehouse. While lost in thought, he was suddenly called by Jimin, who had just regained consciousness. Through tears, Jimin revealed that Lee had come with his superior. She had been forced to lie, claiming that Kim had been at the hospital with her 2 days ago. Having narrowly escaped death, Lee immediately sought out his girlfriend. He told Sojin everything that had happened and urged her to flee abroad with him. He had no other choice if he wanted to stay alive. However, Sojin hesitated, unable to immediately agree to her boyfriend's desperate plea. Lee tried to convince her that they could start a new life together elsewhere. That night, Kim secretly went to the warehouse and took a few stacks of cash. However, as he was about to leave, he found Lee waiting for him, disappointed that Kim had broken their agreement. A fierce fight broke out between them due to their misunderstanding. They attacked each other until exhaustion forced them to stop. After calming down, they finally shared everything that had happened, from Jimin fainting to Kwang-suk's gruesome death. Lee then urged Kim to escape abroad with him. But Kim refused, as Jimin's surgery had to be done as soon as possible. With no other solution, Lee had no choice but to take his share of the money. He had to flee the country with Sajin, no matter what. By morning, Kim, who had dozed off at the hospital, was jolted awake by a phone call. The police chief ordered him to stop Lee, who had been found out. Meanwhile, Lee panicked as he spotted officers outside while packing his belongings. Sajin refused to go with him, leaving him no choice but to escape alone. With all his strength, Lee rushed upstairs to find a hiding place. The police searched every room in pursuit. Kim arrived at the scene and discreetly avoided the police chief and his team. He slipped inside and began searching for Lee alone. To create a distraction, Kim triggered the alarm and slammed his head against the wall. This caused the officers to gather around him, allowing him to mislead them. He claimed that Lee had gone downstairs after attacking him. As the police hurried in the wrong direction, Kim quickly resumed his search. Hearing Kim's calls, Lee finally revealed himself. Kim handed him his car keys and gave him instructions to contact him once he reached a safe place. Without hesitation, Lee jumped out of a window and sprinted toward the parking lot. Reaching the car, he started the engine and sped away at full throttle. At the police station afterward, Sajin, who was being interrogated, could only say that she knew nothing. Oh-sunken, who arrived later, stated that from now on, all investigations must go through him. Moments later, Kim's phone rang, a call from Jukiryeong, who already knew the mastermind behind the theft. He ordered Kim to return his money that night if he didn't want to meet his end. However, Kim refused to be intimidated and instead countered with a threat of his own. Unbeknownst to him, Oh-sunken suddenly appeared, prompting Kim to quickly end the call. It turned out that Oh-sunken wanted Kim to come to the office for a private discussion. That night, after speaking with Oh-sunken, Kim contacted Lee, asking to meet at the warehouse. He assured Lee that a solution would soon be found, but Lee remained silent as if sensing that something was amiss. After ending the call, Kim realized that his betrayal was not by choice but by necessity. Oh-sunken had just exposed their secret with undeniable proof. A short while earlier, Oh-sunken had presented Kim with a recording pen, which he had secretly placed in Lee's car the previous day. The recorded conversation clearly revealed that both Kim and Lee were the masterminds. Despite having solid evidence against them, Oh-sunken deliberately chose not to arrest them immediately. The trillions of stolen money had to fall into his hands first. After all, he had been eyeing it from the beginning, long before Kim and Lee disrupted his plans. At that time, upon hearing rumors of the money being transported to China, Oh-sunken swiftly captured one of the mafia's henchmen. He ordered the now-deceased Kong to torture and coerce the captive into becoming a spy. The man's eventual death confirmed that the rumored plan was indeed real. As a result, Oh-sunken had sent Kong on the night of the shipment, a decision that ultimately led to his demise. Without further delay, Oh-sunken then offered Kim a deal. He would receive a share of the money in exchange for revealing its hiding place. But Kim, unwilling to act selfishly, asked about Lee's fate. Oh-sunken coldly stated that Lee had to take the fall as the sole culprit. Kim, of course, could neither accept this nor do anything about it. Left with no choice, he reluctantly summoned Lee back to the warehouse, just as Oh-sunken had demanded. Upon arriving at the hospital, Kim took advantage of his final opportunity to pay the necessary medical expenses. As a result, Jimin was finally able to undergo surgery after Kim completed the payment. However, while in the restroom, Kim was suddenly confronted by several men, henchmen of the Chinese mafia, who immediately launched an attack. Fortunately, within moments, Kim managed to subdue all of them. Unfortunately, Jukiryeong then appeared, prompting Kim to pursue him. But before he could react, he was ambushed from the side and locked in a chokehold. Helpless, Kim was mercilessly stabbed multiple times by Jukiryeong, who showed no remorse. Eventually, Kim lost consciousness and was dragged silently into the corridor. While Jimin's surgery was underway, Kim was taken by the Chinese mafia to the location where the trillions in cash were hidden. There, Lee waited patiently for his captured comrade's arrival, while Oh-sunken was also preparing to depart alone. Moments later, the Chinese mafia arrived at the warehouse. Fortunately, Lee had anticipated this and had already moved all the money. This infuriated the mafia, prompting them to force Kim into a chair. The big boss then loaded his gun and shot Kim, sending him tumbling into a pit. Seeing that Kim was still alive, the gun was then handed to the executioner. But before he could pull the trigger, Lee burst in and opened fire on everyone, including the now powerless boss. Unfortunately, Jukiriang suddenly sprang up and drove a knife into Lee. As Lee fell, he was also shot in the leg, causing him to scream in pain. In the next moment, Jukiriang realized that Kim had disappeared, only to find him standing, gun aimed, ready to fire. Meanwhile, on the road, Osunken, who was nearing the scene, prepared his weapon. Back at the warehouse, Kim now had his gun trained on the defenseless Lee. When the final gunshot echoed inside, Osunken stormed in, only to find Lee alone, cradling Kim's lifeless body. The details of their battle remained unclear, but Lee simply stated that he now knew everything. Because of this, he refused to reveal where the money had been moved, knowing full well that he would be made the scapegoat. Upon hearing this, Osunken grew frustrated, realizing he had no choice. He now had to alter the narrative, pinning everything on Kim instead. He quickly called the police chief, who was in the midst of recovering Junghun's corpse from the lake. Osunken reported that he and Lee had successfully captured the criminal, none other than Kim, who had died in the struggle. He spun a story about Kim's fight with the Chinese mafia over the illegal trillions. The police chief had no reason to doubt him, allowing Osunken to freely embezzle all the money. But suddenly, Kim and Lee had been working together all along to deceive Osunken. The recording pen was retrieved to erase all evidence. As he lay dying, Kim urged Lee to stick to their plan, to report that Kim was the one who had killed everyone. With tears streaming down his face, Kim reminisced about his moments with his daughter. His only wish was for Jimin to be protected by his closest friend. As Kim's eyes slowly closed, Jimin, having completed her surgery, finally awakened from her coma. A few weeks after the case was closed, Lee made a final decision: he was leaving the police force for good. The trillions he had secured would be used to rebuild his chaotic life. With Jimin now fully recovered, Lee headed to the airport, ready to start anew. The two of them, bound by the blood of their struggles, were no longer just allies, they were family.